Welcome, welcome everyone to the last session of the day. Last but not least, we have Lee Drozak. Lee Drozak is a WordPress teacher, doer, and fixer at Lee Drozak Biz, which she founded in 2008. She's what some call a unicorn, designer, developer, and strategist who feels user-friendliness and planning are where design starts. So join me in welcoming Lee.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I am today going to be talking about working from anywhere, taking your show on the road. So what if you could work more efficiently and successfully from anywhere? Would you travel more, get out more, become truly location independent? And what if you could live a stress-free digital nomad lifestyle just by having the right tools and systems so that you could successfully work anywhere? Well, today I'm going to give you a peek behind my curtain of how I live and work from my space on wheels. It's a way that easily allows you to be productive while meeting client needs and keeping them happy, but also traveling to different places and locations unknown. And get this, travel isn't the only reason for you to work remotely. You might be tired of being tethered to your office or to a confined space. And so this gives you a little bit different way to work. But this session isn't going to be about just working remotely to get out of your office. It's going to be about traveling and working, whether you're attending an event or you want to travel to parts unknown, or even if you just need to take a week away and need to continue with your client work or business. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of working remotely. Productivity challenges that you may and will encounter, some rinse and repeat systems that you should have in place, and then also embracing the environment that you might be working in. I'm Lee Drozak. I am owner of LDB Creative, which was formerly Lee Drozak Biz. I am a WordPress teacher, doer, and fixer, but more importantly, I'm an RV traveler. I am not only going to show you how to prepare yourself for stress-free remote working, but I'm also going to show you some of the things that I have to work on the road while we are traveling. All the resources that I mentioned here are going to be available in the slide deck and on a checklist that will be available at leedrozak.com/WC Kent 2020. And also feel free to tweet me using the hashtag WordCamp Kent with any questions or follow-ups that you might have. So let's talk about the pros. There's a lot of pros about working anywhere, but nothing is more important that you can work anywhere. Freedom. Today's technology makes what wasn't possible just a short time ago totally possible today, because there's a lot of great technology options, and the best part is it keeps getting better and better and better. With 5G on the horizon, you're going to find that working remotely or being location independent is going to be even easier than it is today. And the lifestyle is great for any kind of work style that you have. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, there are spaces that are available for you to comfortably work in. And the best part is there's minimal overhead. So you get bonus points for saving money on anything, right? And that includes office overhead. Because most of the time you only need a good internet connection and a computer to get your work done. And then someone else is paying the heat and the light and the electric and the furnishings. So you don't have to have a full-blown office with furnishings and whatnot in order to be able to work. But my favorite thing is the productivity that I gain. because a change of scenery often does wonders for your productivity because it's a change of perspective, especially if you're a creative person, and that just little change of location can be wonders for what you get done in a day, especially if you're designing or developing websites. But with the pros come the cons. I mean, there's always minuses with every plus, and some of them are loneliness. Yeah, you get to meet a lot of new people and visit a lot of great places and have experiences. But again, everything is new and different from each location. So familiarity kind of goes out the window, and you might miss out on things at home that you're used to, whether it's celebrating with family or even attending your favorite meetup or networking event. And you have to be highly, highly organized. Finding the right workspace, having the right tools and the comfort items that you need, preparing for the snafus that may rear their head. These are just a few items that can derail your workday. And if you don't have a good plan in place, it can be really disastrous for you. And of course, you've got the distractions, because it's easy to get distracted, because you're not familiar with things that are in your new space. So everything needs to be seen in a different light, or there's always places to visit. And of course, you can never control how other people act in that environment, because keep in mind that there are people who are going to where you're going to be to socialize or to tourist or for other reasons. They're not there to work. So that can easily add to your distractions. And then finally, you have decision fatigue. When we are presented with a lot of choices, it's human nature to overthink. And so not only do you need to make decisions about your workday and your workspace and everything else that's going on, but you also have to think about the environment and what you're going to need to get there and to work comfortably. So there are cons, but to me, the pros really outweigh them. Now, with the cons, there are also some challenges, and challenges are different than cons because they're really like stumbling blocks or roadblocks that might get in your way. So the first is definitely work-life balance. While being able to be wherever you are and do whatever you want might sound awesome, in reality, it's really difficult, especially at first, to balance work life with the real stuff, because you want to go places and see things, and everything is new and it's different, and you don't want to miss out, but you can't not work on your client stuff. So there's a fine line to begin with. It's even a little more challenging when you're working remotely or from different spaces. Because sometimes to compensate, we work too hard, and then we do burnout because we're trying not to miss deadlines and everything else, and trying to cram a lot of stuff into our day. And by the end of the day, you're just mentally and probably physically exhausted. But then again, you work too little and nothing gets done. And then you feel guilty, or you feel like you're not putting in the effort that you should. So that definitely is a big thing to think about. And then you have travel times and time zones. So travel times, you always have to think about layovers and traffic and other hindrances that may affect or derail your schedule. And then couple that with the time zone changes. Things can be a little difficult, and you might even miss appointments or deadlines because of that. So two things that I make sure that I always have in my resource toolkit is every time zone, everytimezone.com. And that gives you, it's a browser-based app, and it gives you where, like if it's 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, it will tell you wherever the day is, the location is that time of day. And then I also make sure that on my smartphone, I have my roaming clock enabled. And what that does, it's GPS based. So as you go into a new time zone, it automatically adjusts your time for you. So you're not trying to calculate in your head, what time is it based on where am I, or have to figure out, did I cross that time zone? It automatically happens for you. And then, of course, internet, spotty Wi-Fi, intermittent internet, slow public-only access internet. These are some of the big issues that you face when you are an online business and you're working remotely. So some of the things that I do to combat these is I have a mobile hotspot on my phone, and I use that to connect. Now, I use Verizon Wireless because I found that no matter where I am in the United States, it definitely allows me to connect in places that other services wouldn't. And also I have Spectrum for my internet at home, and they have a whole Wi-Fi network. So you want to check with your internet provider too and see if they have the same thing. Now, the Wi-Fi provider network is still public access, meaning that it's one network and it's public, but you don't, not everybody is accessible to it. You have to be a customer of that service. So it kind of, it isn't super fast, but it isn't crawling slow either. And then you also want to remember to have a VPN for the public access so that you can keep your information safe. And that's whether you're working in a Starbucks or a co-working space or even an Airbnb. And then my favorite app that I have is Trip Mode, and that's an app for my laptop. I believe that it's Mac and PC, and what it does is when I connect to mobile hotspot, it will just, and I turn it on, I can tell it which apps I want to feed data, so I don't have to worry about stopping Dropbox Sync or Drive Sync. It can be done automatically just by clicking a little link. And I also make sure that I have a Wi-Fi extender, especially in campgrounds, because a lot of them are rural. So slow, spotty internet is really a challenge in some of the different campgrounds that we go to. And then finally, keeping your possessions safe. So you want to keep your information safe, but you also have to keep your equipment safe because, especially today, equipment is not an inexpensive item. So what I do is I carry equipment insurance through my provider, through my business insurance. I do sometimes take travel insurance, but that's only more or less if I'm going to be outlaying a lot of money or for an extended period of time. But when you want to think about safety, you want to think about if my equipment, my computer, my iPad, my smartphone, if it gets lost, broken, or stolen, what am I going to have to do to replace it? And then just as much as you have to think about cost, you have to think about time too. How many apps do I have to put back on? Do I have access to a sync so that I can get up and running in a matter of time? So those are some of the challenges. They're not cons, but they definitely are things that you need to think about. And all of that, I put that together as part of my systems because systems are the lifeblood of working anywhere. I mean, actually, they're the lifeblood of business in general, but you need to take a few steps to create and document systems that are helpful, not just business systems, but travel systems too. So the first thing I do is I make sure that I document everything. All of the processes that I need, I have them documented in Google Drive, and I make sure that I use both screen shares and screencasts and just really lay it out in an environment that I can get it, whether I'm on a smartphone, on a laptop, on an iPad, or even if I have to hit a computer in the local library, I can make sure that I can access it. But not only do I have documents for my workday, I have documents for my travel planning. What do I need to find out about the location I'm going to? Is it a hotel? Do they have access to Wi-Fi? Do they have remote environments that I can work in. So all of the questions that I would normally ask, I have that documented too, so that if I'm making travel plans or someone is making them for me, then these items can be addressed. And then you want to identify the time sucks in your day, because you need to figure out how to save time to be productive, because you won't have an 8-hour workday some days. You might only have a 6-hour workday because you have to factor in travel time. So you have to figure out where you spend your time doing what. Outsource the things that make sense to outsource, and then also train your clients to use your workflows, because your workflows are only as good as the people using them. So if you have great documented workflows but nobody's using them, they're really not so great. And then you also need to factor in expectations and boundaries. So clients are the main reason that our days get derailed. And it's important that you not only have boundaries, but you set the expectations too of that client relationship. Because you don't want to have poor customer service because a client or a customer feels like they're not getting the support or service that they need. So I don't work weekends. And normally I don't take appointments on Monday, and all of my new clients and existing clients know this. I tell them, like, the only time I work on a weekend is if your site is down and we need to get it back up, or if you have an emergency, like an urgent emergency. It may be the only way that I would take an appointment on Monday. But Mondays are usually reserved, one, for me for CEO time, and two, to recover from travel that I do, because we normally travel on Mondays instead of over the weekend. So you want to make sure that you not only set them, but you reiterate them with your clients and partners and even team members. And then finally, you need to pick the right tools. Because you have to make sure that your tools work across your devices. So I have a MacBook and an iPad, but then I have a Samsung smartphone. So my apps have to not only be iOS, they have to be Android as well. And then I have team members, and some of them are PCs and some of them are Macs. So I have to make sure that the tools I pick are compatible with the tasks that they are going to do, or they really aren't great tools for me. Now, tools can make or break your systems. So first of all, you want to make sure that you have a good cloud storage system. Your online file structure should be accessible from wherever you are on whatever device. And you want to make sure that you always have your most important files in a secure solution. So my go-tos are Dropbox and Drive. And then I use Evernote. So Dropbox is usually where I store all my client files because it has the largest amount of storage. Drive is where I share my team stuff, because I found that no matter what device, it's accessible and it's very easy to update, no matter whether you're using, Pages or Word or something else. And then Evernote is just a way to easily sync notes for my notebook. And then you have to have good communication. So you have to think about video calls and chats and messaging, and then also emails and voice. So what I use is Slack for my messaging. I have a Slack channel for my clients and my partners and my team. I also have, I found that some of my clients now like Facebook Messenger. So I will pop into there every once in a while and check those messages. And then of course for video, I use Zoom because it works the best in most cases. So I just found that not only does it work well, but it also syncs with my scheduling app so that my meetings are automatically scheduled and I don't have to worry about that. And then finally, I use Voxer because sometimes things get lost in translation in messaging and in emails. And so with Voxer, it's like a one-way phone conversation. You record what you have to say, the person gets it, they record what they want to say, and so it's like having a telephone conversation with a big lag time is all it is. And I found that when I have to explain something, or I know that something isn't going to make sense in a message or an email, then I will send a Vox or a message to them. And of course, you have your financial systems because you have to get paid and collect your money. So you want to make sure that you have a good online system that not only works with your payment processors, but is able to send and receive money easily. But you also have to think about ATMs and banking. Are you going to be charged fees at your ATM? Do you have a bank that you can go into in an emergency to get money, or, to do any kind of banking that you need? So besides invoicing and financials, you need to make sure that you look into banking and even like PayPal and Stripe and collecting money. And then finally, you want to make sure that your apps are team friendly, your project management system, your operating systems, your applications. So my 3 apps that I use every single day are G Suite, mostly for the email. And I use G Suite because it's a branded email. And then Trello is what I use for my project management system. I used to use Asana, but I found that Trello works a little better for me because I can automate a lot more. And then Book Like a Boss is what I use for my scheduling, because not only does it integrate with my calendar, but it integrates with Zoom. So these are the systems that I have in place because I want to be able to work from anywhere that I want, and finding a comfortable environment is really simple when you have the rest of everything in play. So here are some of the places that I've worked from. Everywhere from the Google offices in Pittsburgh to parks, and of course my RV and campground. So the first thing that comes to mind when you're working remotely for most people is coffee shops, hotels, cafes, co-working spaces, but you might also want to consider other areas like pools and lakes. Libraries are a good place, or even couch surfing with a relative or a friend or a colleague. So there's a couple rules that you should follow or go by. And the first is no matter where you're going to work, check with that establishment for requirements to work there. Some people don't care if you're there all day, and other people only want you to be there for a limited time. And so you don't want to hit their solicitation issues. You want to make sure that you're not going to be getting kicked out, or that they are going to get upset with you for working there. And the second thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you patronize accordingly. If you're at a coffee shop, a cafe, or a restaurant, make sure that you order food. If you're sitting there all day, order a meal, not just a cup of coffee. If you're going to a library, some of them charge for internet, but if they don't and you're going to be in the space all day, ask if you can make a small donation. A few dollars here or there is always greatly appreciated in a library. Same with a museum or a zoo. There's a lot of discount coupons out there, but you want to make sure that you're trying not to freeload over the space. If you want, a space that is low cost, then think about going to, parks or somewhere that is open to the public. And you also want to be cognizant of the calls that you're taking in a public space. I mean, we know that you're going to eventually have to take phone calls or even check in. So find a private area if you're in a public space. Be cognizant that you don't want other people listening to your conversation, and you don't want other people listening into your conversation. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're doing a video call as opposed to an audio call. And then, of course, noise canceling earphones or earbuds are always a great tool to have in your must-haves. Not only does it keep, especially if you're listening to video or maybe trying to listen to some white noise to help you be more productive, but it also will really dial down on the external noise that might be in the space you're in. But the bottom line is, look, obey the rules of the space and be courteous. Make sure that you get to know the businesses you're in. Don't just go in and plop yourself down. Get their backstory, because you never know when you go into a place that might be a potential client for you too. So take advantage of everything that you can when you're in the different space, not just the fact that you're in a different space, but what can you gain by getting a relationship from the person that is there. And always remember, just because you can does not mean that you should. Like, I love the ocean and the beach, but that environment is really rough to work in. So my husband retired this year, and we decided to spend 3 months on the beach in North Myrtle Beach, which was great, waking up every day. But here's the problem. There's sand everywhere. There's salt water in the air all the time. And then days when you didn't think it would be hot, it was hot. So you had all these different external things that you had to think about. So I was really careful with my devices being out in the salt water and the sand. But if I had to catch up on some reading or brainstorm, or just want to unplug and do some notes in a notebook, being on the beach was the perfect place to work from. So I had to think about all this before I went down, because I needed 2 types of workspace. Same if you are thinking about working in a park. Parks are amazing places to work. They're quiet, they're open, the fresh air does perfectly for you. But here's the thing, like, if it starts to rain and there's no shelter, you've got a problem, especially if you've got electronics all laid out. Or you might be sitting there enjoying the peace and quiet, really rocking the tasks that you're doing because you're in this peace and quiet. And all of a sudden, here comes a pickup game of football with a bunch of teenagers. Well, one, you can't tell them to be quiet, and you can't expect them not to share the space with you. So just think about, different things that can go wrong in the space that you're in, and plan for them, and then find an alternative. Museums, zoos, and conservation areas are really forgotten spaces that are nice, quiet spaces. Well, zoos maybe not so much. It depends on the zoo. And even some college campuses will allow you to use their lounges or outdoor spaces. Some you have to have the proper credentials, but it just depends, especially if you're at an event and an event is held in a campus or somewhere where there is education. You might be able to go ahead and use the resources that they have available. Just remember that you're not limited to traditional spaces. So think outside the box a little bit and be a little creative if you really want to take advantage of working remotely. And then finally, the tools of the trade that need to go with you. So this is actually pictures of my backpack and everything that's in it. I took these pictures before I traveled a few weeks ago in our first camping trip of the year. And my bag is like an appendage, right? I never leave home without it. And I also have a checklist of everything that goes into my bag, because I don't want to forget things. Even though I've been doing this for years, there have been times where I have to stop and think, do I have this? Do I have that? So I just made a checklist and added it as part of my systems so that I knew when I walked out the door, I had every single thing that I had. And I've also invested in some extra things that make life easier. Extra charging cords. I have 2 battery backups, and some other double items. Now, I didn't buy these all at one time. I took advantage of Black Friday and Amazon Prime days to get these. A couple of them were Kickstarter deals that I knew that I would need 2 of them eventually, so I took advantage of that. So, think about things that if you lost a charging cord, if you lost it, what would happen if you couldn't replace it? That's why I got a double of my charging cord, because I thought if I can't find my charger and my laptop goes dead, I can't work. So these are some of the other things that you have to think about. And also in my bag, I put a light jacket because, I might go into someplace and the air conditioning is set really high and it's cold, or the heat is set low and it might be a little chilly, or, you leave in the morning and it's warm and you're working through the day and it gets a little cooler, especially if you're camping, because the temperature variety is crazy different. Also, I have tea bags and sweetener and some drink mixes that I use for water bottles, so that I have them if if I'm need something in addition to water. Business cards, I always make sure that I have an adequate stack of business cards, mints, and a Tide to Go pen too, especially if you're going somewhere where you're eating and you spill on yourself, you can quickly clean yourself up. And then even if you're meeting someone, you're presentable. So think about all of the things that you need to make you comfortable, and then put that on your list for your bag to pack. So that is, in a nutshell, very quickly, in a 30-minute condensed, how I travel anywhere in my RV and work from wherever I may be. It is a lifestyle that I absolutely love, because I don't like to be confined to one space, but there are the challenges, and it is not for everybody. So if it's something that you're thinking of doing, maybe do like a day trip here or a day trip there, or even, go to a friend's house and work from there, just to kind of feel it out and see. And then don't be afraid to join forums or groups. There's tons of Facebook groups for people who travel. There are tons of groups for people who work remotely. So learn from other people's mistakes and get the insider tips from them by joining those groups, if this is something that you truly, truly want to do. So again, my checklist, my slides, my resource list, it's all on the website. Just go to leedrozak.com/WC Kent 2020 and pick up the goods there. And I think we have time for a few questions. So if anyone has some questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Lee. I do have some questions that I jotted down. You got some comments that it's some great practical advice that you're giving, and people appreciated all the comments on the systems. So we have a question. Oops, I didn't write down that person's name. We have a question from someone on what is the hardest part of remote work to implement of all the systems.
So the hardest part to implement is the balance, figuring out where you're going to be, everything that can go wrong to get you there, and then how it can derail your day. The easiest part of the systems are the work systems, because most people already have that or in the process of it. So, even if you're working from a home office or an office, you have some kind of structure to your day. The hardest system that I found was checking on all of the variables that can go wrong when you are working remotely. The good thing is most places, McDonald's has free Wi-Fi, Starbucks has free Wi-Fi. A lot of places have free Wi-Fi, but some of them are a little difficult to work in because they're very noisy. So that's how I found libraries and museums. Libraries are amazing places to work because you have like the quiet. A lot of them have conference rooms that they'll let you go in if they're not being used. So when you think about your systems, I would say don't, you always have to really think about your business systems. But since you already have that started or should have that started, think about the travel systems as well.
Great. And then we have from, if I can pull his name quickly enough, from Stephen. He's asking the best way or the best place to find remote positions now that the market is so saturated. I don't know if you have any tips on that.
So it depends on how you're going to travel. So there's like this whole, if you love camping and RVing, there's like this whole underground railroad of business people virtual business people. And there's even, I think it's called work ampers. And I don't know if it's everybody in general or just people who work in camp, but they like list all of the opportunities that are out there. I think the thing is that everything is so different now because we're in a different time. So it's hard to say, do this and do that. Just use general business logic. Pick a niche, differentiate yourself. If you're going to work remotely, the best thing to do is to talk to the business owner. I've gotten more business by going in and just because I love everybody's backstory too, but I've gotten more business just by opening up that dialogue. Because I'll say, hey, have you been here long? How did you get started? Can you tell me in the area, is there a place to get my hair cut? Is there, what's your favorite restaurant? And so that starts the conversation, and they'll be like, oh, well, what do you do? And I tell them, and then we kind of talk about challenges. So it's an opportunity for me to even say, hey, you know what? Do you have 5 minutes? Let's sit down and talk. Or just to kind of say, do you know anybody else in the area who needs help? So it's a good way to open up that dialogue, because I think now, especially in this time, the best way to get new business or to even keep a business going is to build those relationships.
That's great advice. And then from Melissa, who I actually work with in my day job, she had some comments on international travel and how important it is to get travel insurance, but she was curious if you had any advice specific for international travel.
Yeah, so international travel, you definitely want to have travel insurance. You also want to, because Wi-Fi internationally is really hit or miss. So you want to talk to people who've been there. The best thing to do is find groups on Facebook or on Twitter of people who either are expats there or who travel there frequently. And then ask them, what are some resources? I'm going to be working and traveling in this area. I actually have a friend who is in Mexico right now, and she joined probably 10 groups. And she got some really great advice on what to do. But even if you're traveling domestically, do the same thing, because you will cut the learning curve really by a lot if you just talk to people and find out what their challenges were, the best places to work, the best Wi-Fi to have. I know, like in some campgrounds, there is no Wi-Fi. So I know, like, I really got to double down on my hotspot. So I make sure that I move up to the next level with my hotspot. And then my husband's phone is my backup, so that if I need the data, that it's always there for me. So just, have conversations, seek out groups in the areas that you will. We all love to talk about ourselves and our experience. So getting the information is not going to be hard once you ask.
Very true. We have some folks that might be also interested in some like RV specific information, like what your rig is like and some of that. So if there's somewhere we can send them to look, maybe you have something on a blog or
I don't have anything on a blog now. I do have a fifth wheel, a 40-foot fifth wheel, but we also have a smaller rig, because one of the things that we found out in wanting to do all the national parks is you can't take big rigs into national parks. There's just not enough space. They weren't built for that. But if you want to connect with me on Facebook, I would, please do so. I'll answer questions. I've been RVing since I was little, probably 14, maybe 13, 14. So I've been doing it a long time and learned a lot along the way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And if everyone, we have a short break, but then if everyone can join us for closing remarks, they'll be in both the stream sessions. So you can leave your screen where it's at, go take a quick break, and come back for our closing remarks. And thank you again, Lee, and everyone for being here for WordCamp 10.
Thanks, everyone.